Red and blue lights flashed against the walls as sirens wailed louder, signaling the arrival of backup. Moments later, the mansion was flooded with movement. Medics rushing in with stretchers, officers spreading out to secure the scene, and the grim task of removing the bodyguards' corpses began. Detective Jang sat on the floor of the master bedroom, a medic pressing gauze firmly against his bleeding shoulder. His shirt was soaked with blood, his face pale but his eyes still sharp. Just beside him, Judge Huang Daejin was being carefully lifted onto a stretcher, an oxygen mask secured over his face. Amidst the chaos, Chief Inspector Baek Songjun strode in, his coat flaring behind him. He stopped in front of Jang, his eyes sweeping over the carnage before settling on the wounded detective. "Jang," he said, his voice low and clipped. "What the hell happened here?" Jang winced as the medic adjusted his bandage, then looked up at Baek with weary eyes. "The same killer who took out Mr. Song came here, with a team. After the first bodyguard was killed, I tried to get Huang out of his study to somewhere safe. But I was shot before I could. When I woke up and reached the bedroom, I thought he was dead. I was checking his pulse when he came to." Baek crouched down, his expression unreadable. "Why did they leave him alive?" Jang's voice dropped. "Someone stopped him." Huang said he heard a voice, someone speaking through an earpiece in the killer's ear. The voice said Huang wasn't the one who ruined his father, that he was just doing his job. Baek's brow furrowed. "A voice? So he wasn't acting alone?" "I think so," Jang replied. "But whoever that person is, the killer trusted him enough to stop. Which means they've met before. And there's more." Huang said the killer looked Ghanaian. He said he resembled Kwame Williams, the man he sentenced 10 years ago. Baek slowly rose to his feet, the pieces beginning to align. "Then we're in deep trouble. It took us years to bring down Kwame. And now someone shows up looking just like him." He turned sharply to Jang. "You think it's his son?" Jang nodded. "He might be. And if he is, he's here for revenge." He leaned back against the wall, breathing heavily, his face etched with determination. Baek narrowed his eyes. "We need to find him, Jang. I won't let another monster like Kwame walk free in this city." Jang gave a grim nod. "I'll find him, even if it's the last case I ever solve." Baek glanced down at the blood staining Jang's hands and shirt. "Don't make it your last. We need your mind more than ever." With that, Baek turned and barked orders to the officers pouring into the room, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Search the premises. I want every camera, every footprint, every trace that can lead us to the one who did this. Move." The chaos of the previous night had faded into a haunting silence. The mansion now stood still, cordoned off by yellow tape and guarded by weary officers. Judge Huang Daejin had been sent to the hospital before the tech team began analyzing the estate's security system, only to discover that the cameras had been expertly jammed. With no footage to rely on, Chief Inspector Baek Songjun turned to Detective Jang, who stood quietly beside the window, his face pale and weary. "You've done enough for tonight," Baek said, his voice firm but not unkind. "Go home, Jang. Get some rest. We'll regroup in the morning." Jang hesitated, but the throbbing in his shoulder and the weight of exhaustion left him no room to argue. "Call me the moment he's ready to talk," he said. "You'll be the first to know," Baek promised. The next morning at the hospital, Chief Inspector Baek and Detective Jang stepped off the elevator. Jang looked a little steadier after a few hours of sleep and fresh bandages, but his eyes remained sharp and haunted. They were led to a private recovery room where Judge Huang lay propped up against white pillows, his complexion still pale, but stronger than the night before. An oxygen tube rested beneath his nose, and a nurse quietly checked his vitals before stepping out to give them privacy. "Judge Huang," Baek said as he approached, "we need your help. The cameras were jammed. You're the only one who saw the killer's face." Huang nodded slowly, his fingers twitching slightly over the blanket. "Yes, I remember him." Jang stepped closer, notepad in hand. "Can you describe him for us? Every detail matters." The judge closed his eyes briefly, summoning the memory. "He was young, maybe in his 30s. He is Ghanaian and tall, about 6 feet, with broad shoulders and sharp features. His voice was calm and also cold. He moved like a professional." Jang scribbled quickly as Baek exchanged a look with him. "I'll call in the sketch artist," Baek said. "We'll have a composite by noon." He turned back to the judge. "Don't worry. We'll definitely get him." Huang nodded before Baek then turned to Jang and said, "Once the portrait is done, we start the hunt. If this really is Kwame Williams' son, then we're not just chasing a killer, we're chasing a legacy." Jang nodded grimly. And this time we finish what we started. That same morning, Daniel drove through narrow, winding roads that slithered between quiet hills and patches of mist. The further he got from the city, the quieter it became, until the noise of engines and voices faded into the hum of early morning birdsong. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, his heart thudding with a mix of dread and anticipation. The address scribbled on the back of the letter had led him here, to a forgotten part of the countryside. Eventually, he pulled up to a tall iron gate. It looked old, yet there wasn't a speck of rust on it. The gate slowly creaked open before he even touched the intercom. Standing just beyond it was a man, tall, composed, dressed in a dark coat. His silhouette was familiar. It was the middle-aged man from the cafe, the one who'd spoken to him days ago, and again yesterday. Daniel stepped out of the car, confused. You again. I told you I knew enough, the man said with a half-smile, hands behind his back. And I knew you'd come. Curiosity, after all, runs in your blood. Daniel didn't respond. He simply nodded. Come, the man added. There's much to talk about. He turned and led Daniel up a long gravel path, lined with tall trees whose branches arched overhead like sentinels guarding secrets. At the end stood a sprawling mansion, its stone walls weathered by time but proud and its windows tall. Around the grounds, people moved with quiet purpose, unloading boxes, reviewing maps on large tables, cross-referencing documents in hushed tones. Daniel glanced at them. Who are all these people? They're what's left of what your father started, the man said cryptically. And what he left behind. They entered through heavy oak doors into a grand hall with arched ceilings, faded Persian rugs, and paintings of unfamiliar faces, some of which bore an eerie resemblance to Daniel. The man guided him into a sitting room bathed in warm sunlight. A long table stood at the center, set with bottled water, tea, and a thick folder. The air smelled faintly of aged wood, and something else, something colder. Sit down, Daniel, the man said, gesturing to a chair. You'll need to. You said you had something to tell me about my father. The man lowered himself into the seat opposite, folding his hands. Your father, Kwame Williams, was not the man you think he was. Daniel's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? He was a businessman, a good father, a good husband. He raised me with values. He taught me to be good. The man chuckled bitterly. A good man? Then he wore his mask well. Or maybe you never truly knew him. Daniel leaned forward. Explain. The man's expression darkened. When your father came to South Korea, he started out as an ambitious businessman. He built his tech empire from scratch. But after a year, greed got the best of him. He joined an underground syndicate. Not just joined, he became one of its core players. He was ruthless, cold, and efficient. That can't be true, Daniel whispered. It is, the man replied firmly. He killed people who defied him. The doctored footage Choi presented at court 10 years ago? It was real. Your father killed that man. Daniel's chest rose and fell rapidly. No, my father, he couldn't. He helped smuggle illegal weapons through diplomatic channels, using his company as cover. He arranged high-profile assassinations, manipulated politicians, and turned trusted allies into pawns. The man paused and took a slow sip of water. Daniel shook his head violently. You're lying. The man set down the glass. Am I? Tell me this. Do you truly believe your father is dead? Daniel blinked. Yes. I received a letter from the prison. They said he died behind bars. They even gave us the date and cause of death. The man gave a dry laugh. Dead. Your father was never in that prison. The man who died there was a body double. Your father escaped midway while being transported. It was all part of his plan, to vanish and let the world believe he died in disgrace. Daniel stared at him in shock. The man continued. But that wasn't the end of it. He concocted a plan for revenge, to use you as a weapon against those who brought him down. Daniel stood suddenly, slamming his palm against the table. My father would never. He would never betray me like that. The man's voice dropped to a grave whisper. Oh, he would. He already did. While building his empire, he married into another powerful family. He has 2 other sons now. You and your mother? You were left behind. Forgotten. Daniel's fists clenched. So my mother, she mourned a man who faked his death. And he used me, his own son, as a pawn to do his dirty work. Don't take my word for it, the man said. He pulled a thick envelope from his coat and placed it on the table. Interpol had a file on him. They never caught him because he was always 2 steps ahead, until Chairman Kwan Tae-shik and a group of businessmen helped bring him down. Daniel's eyes stayed fixed on the envelope. Kim, Choi, and Song, the man added. They were once your father's allies. But when he betrayed them, they helped expose him. Daniel looked up slowly. Why are you telling me all this? The man's face twisted in pain. Because he murdered my wife, my 2 sons, and their families. All because I dared to challenge him. That was the price I paid. His fist slammed against the wall. Just then his phone buzzed. He picked it up, said a few words, and within minutes, another figure entered the room. Daniel's eyes widened. Min-kyu. Min-kyu nodded solemnly, his voice heavy with emotion. 5 years before your father was arrested, he killed my father just because he refused to sell his company to him. My mother couldn't bear the grief, so she took her own life. After that, I was left all alone, forced to survive on my own. Your father destroyed my family. For years, I lived for one purpose, and that is to revenge their death. The man turned to Daniel with a smirk. Told you. Daniel's voice was hoarse. Can I trust my people? Min-Lee shook his head. Do not trust all of them. Especially not Lily. Daniel froze. What? She works for your father, Min-kyu said quietly. She's been with him since the day he created his business. She called him after you killed Choi, Prosecutor Kim, and Mr. Song. She has been his second-in-command ever since. The realization crashed down on Daniel. Her skill, her precision, her ruthless efficiency, and how she managed to bring back life to a company that went bankrupt. It all made sense now. Your father was not the victim, Min-Lee said firmly. He was the villain, and he almost succeeded in using you. Join us, Daniel. Help us take him down before he does worse than he did 10 years ago. Daniel's chest tightened as his world shattered around him. He's still your father, Min-Lee added softly. But you must not let him live. After a few seconds, Daniel agreed. That morning, Lily sat behind her sleek mahogany desk, fingers dancing across the keyboard as she reviewed some documents. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting slanted patterns across the marble floor. Her phone buzzed. She picked it up and placed it to her ear. Speak. A male voice responded, low and firm. He failed. Hwang Daejin is still alive. Lily's fingers paused mid-type. Her voice turned sharp. Why didn't he kill him? I don't know what stopped him, the officer replied. Lily leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowing, and she said, So he hesitated. Yes, the officer confirmed. And now a portrait of him has been drawn. Soon a hunt for him will begin. Lily said simply, Okay. Then she hung up. After hanging up, Lily stared at her phone for a few seconds, then calmly tapped in a number. It rang only once before the line connected. Yes, a deep voice answered. It's me, Lily said coolly. Daniel failed to kill Hwang Daejin. He's still alive. A heavy pause. Then a low growl rumbled through the phone. What? He didn't go through with it, she said quietly. Now the authorities are circulating a sketch of him. It must have been Min-Lee. He must have reached him in time. Maybe he said something about you just before he was about to be killed. There was a loud crash, something being thrown violently. That stupid, weak bastard. Kwame Williams exploded. Am I not his father? Wasn't it his duty to avenge me? He's trash. I gave birth to such trash. Lily remained silent, letting him unravel. He's an ungrateful little fool. A disgrace to my name. I should have left him, and that miserable woman he calls a mother, to rot in that dusty house in Ghana. I gave him power. I gave him purpose. And now he dares to bite the hand that made him. He seethed, his voice rising with each word. And Min-Lee, that bastard. How did he manage to escape after I ordered the hit? With a roar of fury, he swept everything off the table, sending objects crashing to the floor. Lily's voice sliced through the fury like a blade. What do you want me to do? A long, cold pause followed. Eliminate him, Kwame said at last, his voice flat and lethal. You're sure? Lily asked without emotion. Yes, he hissed. Take the team he trained, the ones he trusts most. Use them to end him quietly. He's useless now. Lily nodded slowly. It will be done. The line went dead. She stared at the dark screen for a long moment, her face unreadable. Then, with calm precision, she began drafting a message to Daniel's team. The hunt had begun, but this time the prey was their own. Back at the countryside, the silence outside was broken only by the rustle of trees swaying in the wind and the distant chirping of birds. Inside the room, tension clung to the air like a fog that refused to lift. Min-Lee turned to Daniel, studying his face. What are you going to do now? Daniel stood slowly, his eyes focused on the view beyond the window. I'm going back to the penthouse. Minkyu's voice cut in sharply. No, you can't. That's the first place they'll look for you. Daniel looked over his shoulder. Why? Minkyu crossed his arms, his jaw tense. Because the mole at the police station must have already informed Lily that you didn't kill Huang Daejin. She has probably told your father by now. Min Lee nodded grimly. And you know your father. He doesn't tolerate failure. He will eliminate you, Daniel. You're no longer his son. You're a liability. Daniel's expression didn't change, but the weight of their words pressed into his chest. He stared at the floor for a moment before Min Lee's phone buzzed. He picked it up, glanced at the screen, then swore under his breath. What is it? Daniel asked, his voice low. Min Lee turned the phone so Daniel could see the message and attached image. It was a news alert from a major broadcast station. The sketch of Daniel's face, clean, sharp features, cold eyes, was plastered across the screen with bold text underneath. Wanted in the attempted murder of Judge Huang Daejin and the murders of Chy, Kim, and Song. The police have made it public, Min Lee said. Your face is everywhere now. The media's eating it up. There's no going back. Daniel stared at the image for a moment, his hands slowly curling into fists. The world had chosen sides. His father had made his move. Now it was his turn. Daniel's voice was steady when he spoke. Then let's end this. Min Lee and Minkyu exchanged a glance. Are you ready to fight him? Minkyu asked, stepping forward. Really fight him? Not as his son, but as his enemy. Daniel looked them both in the eye and said, I was his pawn. Now I'll be his punishment. Min Lee nodded once. Then it begins now.